Let's go. Okay. As always, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. It means a lot to me that people keep showing up for these things, so that's good. Today we have a special guest, John Miranda. You can look him up on LinkedIn, but probably a lot of people you don't know until I was further educated today is that Salesforce is throughout our whole company in different sections through marketing, sales, et cetera. And part of that relationship is we get exposure to great people like John. And what John does is they are thinking about the future of media. And the beauty of what he gets to do, he gets to talk to Fox, to Disney, to other companies, not only in the United States, but around the world. And you know what's kind of interesting? Everybody has the same problem. So what he's going to walk you through today is sort of the future of media and where he thinks we, as people inside this great company, should be thinking about, right? That's what we hope these speaker series do for you, is light a light bulb in your head, and you run back and you're like, hey, I saw this really cool thing. We should try experimenting on some of this stuff. So we are taping this, so we'll send the VOD link out in the next 2 days. So friends and family, if you want to share it with them, please do so. So John is Director of Strategy and Technology at Salesforce. He is a futurist, and so without further ado, I'm going to bring John up to the stage. I'll keep some, maybe like 10 minutes at the end for questions and answers, okay? Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. Hey, everybody. To add a little color to what Pete just covered, I work for our Chief Future Officer at Salesforce, which is kind of a fun strategy for saying all in charge of company global strategy for the next 2 to 5 years. So it's our job that like M&A, competitive, tech and product, the rest, they kind of all feed into that, and we bring that to our executive team and then to customers, because a lot of people come to us trying to figure out what is the future. I've got to start with the slides as they're kind of checking over here with a famous Salesforce slide. If you've ever seen Salesforce ever talk with you, it really has to start with some lawyer being happy in the world. Don't buy anything off of what I'm about to share with you. I'm beyond the roadmap for a public company, so talk to the amazing salespeople for our company. Don't buy anything off what I'm about to show you. All right, so we're good. So to start this conversation off and level set of like what's really going on here, it's a big moment of change. The reason why companies come and ask us is, they hear this thing like it's the fourth industrial revolution, like what they talk about at the World Economic Forum. There's a big moment going on, right? You can't go through any quarterly call in the world unless you hear a company saying, we're investing in AI. But I'm going to level set and explain a few things of what that actually means. The first, why this is a big moment of change, is AI is an important one, but it's because of everything before it, right? All the technologies have made this go faster and faster. The capabilities are going quicker. And really the capacity level of all these things is what's pushing it faster to a point, where you can imagine how much our lives change with the internet or what happens to your life if you forget your cell phone somewhere, right? Like there's a moment of impact that's pushing everything forward. And AI is the big moment of change. But in reality, when people talk about AI, first thing is they're really talking about what's something called machine learning. Machine learning is really what is taking off right now. Easiest way to explain machine learning, I've had to do it with like executives and world leaders, is if I give you 5,000 pictures of a cat, and then I give you one more picture, you can tell me if it's a cat or not, right? It's a whole lot of data. It's an evolutionary learning model. It's answering a simple question or doing a simple task. So that's really what's going on in this space. And the other one is actually this chart is a little wrong. AI actually started back in the 60s and the 70s when we thought we understood the human brain, and we said AI was going to take over the world, decades ago, and we're still trying to even figure that stuff out. So when you hear anybody talk about the world of AI, just relax a little bit because there's a lot of bias in that statement. There's no Terminator coming for your job. We're a long ways away from anything of that capability. We're actually working with DARPA on an initiative called the Human Brain Project, which is over the next 17 years, there's 80 different universities and research groups and about $17 billion of investment to map out a cubic millimeter of the brain down to an atom level, because we still have fundamentally no idea how the human brain works at that scale. So we're going to go start there, and that's going to take decades to figure out. The other side, too, is I got to meet with the head of AI over at Project X at Google, and we talked about it. You can take every algorithm on the planet, facial recognition, image recognition, all the great stuff, combine them all together, you get less than 1% of the human brain. Like, we're a long ways away from that. So don't worry about it when people are telling you to freak out. We've got a while. But with that technology, you can do some really powerful things. And I show this because a lot of people don't know the level of depth that goes into the user interfaces of today. There is a team at Netflix called the 60-second crew. It's 100 people. It's their job to get you to make a choice within the product within 60 seconds. And they use a whole lot of stuff behind the scenes to do that. But one of it is that they have moved much further beyond A/B testing and geolocation and the rest, where they are picking from 300,000 different versions of the user interface to show you Netflix. So it's not just the genres and the titles. It's literally fonts, colors, do they show trailers or not, the layout of the screen, everything else is altered. So if you log into Netflix next to somebody else, you do not see the same thing. And they now even do it down to the artwork level. So if you see Stranger Things, you are seeing a picture that is from one of 86,000 different pictures for Stranger Things, and it will show you the monsters, the D&D vibe, the 80s, the romance, whatever you are more aligned to for that show to get you engaged, that's what they're going to show you. And they can even do it across titles, right? So if you see Uma Thurman and you liked her in Paycheck or Kill Bill, then when you see Pulp Fiction, you see her picture, not John Travolta's, right? That's how they cross it aboard. But the important thing about this is that their job is the 60-second crew, not the 5-second crew, which is why when you log into Netflix, you don't find what you immediately want, because they need you to understand what is valuable in the software, right? What is valuable within the product? What is all the content they have there? And that's the move, right? You can use machine learning to not be predictive. It's being prescriptive, right? It's a whole new change of the user interface to make you a better customer. A great example of this is what Amazon does, because a lot of people don't know this. If you go to Amazon and it says customers like you bought this item, as of about a year and a half ago, that's a flat-out lie at this point. That algorithm is actually something that you're going to click on to spend more time browsing the site because they care more about customer satisfaction and NPS scores and the rest than they do money at this point because Amazon has all the money in the world. So they're focusing, again, on making you a better customer, not predicting what you're doing. And that's the shift that we're seeing in user interfaces. It's a really important one, what's going to go on the next couple of years. We're also seeing, because of that and the need around that and the importance of data that feeds into artificial intelligence and machine learning, this is the war of the platform. This is why all the mergers and acquisitions that are all going on right now, and why people are trying to find direct relationships with customers is because you need that to create that story. A great example of this is what Snapchat did for the Olympics. Typical kind of new level of generational expectations of how you interact. So they had abilities for people to talk with Olympians and ask questions, and thought they had a backstage pass to the Olympics. And a lot of people think, oh, that's kind of neat. It's kind of it's behind the scenes. There's hundreds of people that worked on that project to pre-do the questions, to get the Olympians at the right time, to pre-screen what the questions are going to be, to prep the Olympian what they're going to be doing. To create that narrative and the feel that this is authentic and valuable is a whole lot of work. And you have to have the platform and the capabilities to do that. That takes a whole lot of information, which is why, again, they're all fighting on that direct connection. We're also... something I was going to share is a little bit of our view of what people think the future is going to look like. Part of that is because of just the history of my boss. Peter Schwartz is our chief future officer at Salesforce. He's the oldest guy at Salesforce. He's 73 years old, and he's kind of a world-famous futurist. Movies like Minority Report and War Games and Sneakers and Deep Impact all came from him. And when we talk about the future in the next 3 to 5 years, the biggest thing we say is that there's going to be a lot more devices that are going to show up. Augmented reality and virtual reality are really hard problems, and a lot of people expected them to show up immediately. And then they started likening it to the Segway and 3D TV and everything else that didn't do so great. And they're like, why hasn't it taken over the world? It's a really, really hard problem. Augmented reality has probably got the hardest job in that size. It's mainly in the research world. It's mainly in still the military research. The new HoloLens that just came out from Microsoft is $3,500. It's primarily meant for industries of healthcare and manufacturing, et cetera. It's not meant for general use. Whereas virtual reality is doing a different play. They're trying to get out in front of consumers more, obviously from the entertainment side. But one of the biggest plays in VR is going to happen really soon. The Oculus Quest is coming out, which is, if you don't know, there's the Oculus Rift, which requires a thousands of dollars computer. It's super expensive. You need a digitician to help you out with all that. Then you've got the Gear, which is you use your cell phone, but it doesn't do 6 degrees of movement. It can get you motion sickness, all kinds of stuff, and it doesn't work in a lot of great environments. This is the first easy version of VR, which is really going to change everything. I literally could give it to my kids, and they could play it in the back seat of the car, like playing a lightsaber, Beat Saber type game. That's never been possible before. You could never say, I want to do VR. Here's, tell, mom to put this on the Christmas list or whatever it is and give it to the kids, and they could be in the backyard doing VR. That will actually make the bigger change. And this comes out in just a couple of weeks. So they're really going to hit the stage hard with that one when it comes out. We're also seeing huge advancements in bioprocessors, and this is beyond just the Apple Watch that can track your heart rate and other types of devices like the Fitbit. But we're seeing the next level of this. The Samsung bioprocessor that came out recently can track up to 17 different variables. So they can do blood sugar level through your skin. They can do stress. They can do sweat. They can do EKG. They can do all kinds of great stuff. And they've now gone to the point they do ingestible sensors. So Kaiser just finished a brand new initiative in Silicon Valley where normally if you have a really bad flu, you get taken to the hospital, you get pumped full of fluids, and they babysit you for 2 days. That is really expensive. It is not worth their time. There's super bugs in the hospital, all kinds of things you don't want to be there. So what they did is they did a project where they said, okay, we got you with fluids, here's 5 apple peels. And just eat one of these every 36 hours, and it connects to your phone, and it sends it to your dashboard, to your doctor, and they let you know if you need to come in or not. That's the goal, right? Kaiser talks about becoming this ever-present healthcare assistant because getting things like diabetes and obesity and the rest changed, that's behavioral and it's social change, and it's having a healthier lifestyle is different than I have a problem, I'm going to go to you. And that's the bigger switch that we're going to do in that space. Now, combining all this together, I'm going to share with you a little story I'm literally anywhere in the world that I talk about this because it's had huge impact on my life. I have 2 boys, they're 8 and 10 years old, they're autistic and on the spectrum, and we're part of a new initiative with Google and Stanford called Autism Glass. So literally, right now, my kids are in school in California wearing Google Glass, the newest version of it. And it does basically 3 new things. It will do facial recognition, it does motion detection, and it does eye contact detection. So my boys will look at me, and it'll say, Dad is happy, and a little indicator if I have eye contact with them. It is phenomenal. I could spend all day talking about this. This is going from hundreds of thousands of hours of therapists with flashcards of Mickey Mouse and et cetera, trying to explain emotion, to live on the playground, a kid falls down, they know Seth is injured or he's happy, and when to start talking because they have eye contact. It's amazing. And this is really where this technology all kind of comes together. This is AI plus the capabilities of augmented reality and like a valuable use, which is the biggest problem that Google Glass had originally. Besides the fact it lasted like 30 seconds and would melt the side of your head, was more the fact that they had no reason for an application for it. But the biggest one they're working on right now, and for the new version of Google Glass, which comes out at Christmas of 2020, is what would change my life, and it's also going to change all of your guys' life, is the business version of this, which is I walk into a room and I meet somebody and it says your name, it says your job title, and a little checkbox, did I ever meet this person? And I will suddenly have the total pain lifted off of me that I am terrible with names and faces. Like, I am horrible at that. But you can imagine when that comes around, that's a reason to wear it. That's a reason to engage. That's valuable information that helps us connect with other people, right? So those are going to be the big plays that are going to bring this stuff actually into the light. They're not going to try to make it fashionable like they failed last time. They're going to make it practical and useful. So we're going to see that in the next year or so. We're also going to see all this kind of combined into a new workout experience. This is a picture of the Black Gym. It's a new kind of virtual reality gym in New York, and there's a new one being planned out in Los Angeles. And what this is basically take all the capabilities of virtual reality and the fun social impact of it and actually change the gym from the boring run by yourself on a treadmill to do something fun with your friends. Because the millennials and the Gen Zs, they want that healthier lifestyle. It's just not social and fun to do it. So this gets you doing things like you can run from the zombies in The Walking Dead. You can compete yourself in like circus games from last week. You can run around and play Fortnite with your friends in a big arena. But it creates this fun way to actually be healthy. And this is why the Hollywood industry has really been investing in this side. These like locational experiences, and I'll show some more here in a minute, are the kind of things that actually get you out of your house and get you off the couch and get you engaged with the people around you. I can't talk about the future of media entertainment without talking about video games. Video games are kind of taking the world by storm, and a lot of people don't understand the scale of this. Video games are larger than television, film, and music, which are all going roughly anywhere from stagnant growth to down by 10%, where gaming is going up about 13-14% a year. Give it about 5 years, gaming will be larger than all those other 3 combined. And we're seeing drastic changes there. I mean, if you know any kid that plays Fortnite, they'll tell you about what's going on in that space. And from a monetary standpoint, Fortnite makes $2 million a day selling cosmetics and dance moves, and they made over $4 billion last year. And you can look at things like, I met with Disney. We talked about Rogue One. It's an amazing Disney movie. It did phenomenal. $500 million is what they made in the entire first year. You go on the reverse, and Red Dead Redemption made $725 million in the first 3 days of a video game. right? So there's a size and scale difference there. You really have to understand of just how much money goes into this and also where the viewership and a lot of things are paying attention. With that is also just the focus on, jumped up a little fun, is esports, right? And obviously you guys play in this space, but esports is also following that same suit, right? This is why there's a lot of big fights going on, right? Twitch was kind of the leader of it up to this point, but now Fox has joined in and put $150 million into something called Caffeine, trying to compete with that. Microsoft has got Mixer, there's YouTube gaming, there's all this stuff. They're all trying to pay attention to it because the viewership there is staggering. The difference they're trying to figure out is the monetization. The money following the fact that the sports industries have done really good jobs of making money from the viewers, video games have not done that so well. But that's going to change. They're literally starting to figure this out. All the kind of common brands are starting to figure out what is esports. They're getting more engaged. There's a lot more growth there, and this is really going to take off the next couple of years. Part of that is because, wow, it jumps up a lot. Go back. Part of that is because, I'm touching it once. All right, part of that is because of the fact of what technology can do in live events. I could talk a whole time about this. There's a ton of stuff going into this. Everything from facial recognition to drones that monitor, for security, all kinds of great things. But the one that was the most futuristic company I met with last year, and it blows people away when I talk about this, is a company called Konaku. I'm going to do the best to explain this really quickly. This is the first wetware bioprocessor chip, which means there's a thing about the size of a hockey puck that has in it 119 living cells that are grown that wire to a processor, so this little device can smell better than anything on the planet. Because in those cells are rat cells and canine cells and bird cells and a bunch of other stuff. And they use this, obviously in the very beginning it was a DARPA project for military. You need to smell explosives in the Middle East. But now they're breaking out into the commercial world. So you can go into the Toronto airport, there's a test hallway where you can literally walk straight into the airport. You skip all the normal TSA and everything else like that because this thing knows better than anything if you have anything on you you're not supposed to. Disney's been doing the same thing about knowing the smell of the park. So they want to know about if people are smoking something they shouldn't be, or there's a fire going on, or did it really smell like cinnamon after the fireworks because they spent millions of dollars on that. But the other side of it also is a great thing that Kaiser is doing. Literally, this device can smell cancer because certain types of dogs can smell certain types of lymphoma. You're going to literally walk into a doctor's office. This is going to be sitting above the doorway, and it'll make little check marks to say your doctor needs to talk to you, or we should do a test because I think you might have cancer. Right? That's the level we're getting to this kind of crazy stuff. I mean, this is beyond my realm of the next 2 to 5 years. It's probably 5 to 10 to 15 to really take off. But their goal is ocular cells at some point for computer vision. So we're getting to just a really crazy level of understanding biology and connect that with technology, and you can do some pretty amazing stuff. We're also seeing generally in this space, try it again. There we go. Stop. All right. So the other one that's kind of interesting is just the scale. I show this to kind of blow people's minds a little bit. League of Legends is one of the bigger esports out there right now, and it shows how fast this can kind of ramp up. Just a couple of years ago, this was season 1. It was literally like 10 guys in a very small little room with laptops, and they were kind of competing on a scale of like, what is esports for, I think it was like $10,000 or $15,000 or something like that at scale. Give it 6 years, and they do stuff like this, which is the big World League Championship that happened in Seoul, South Korea. It was 100,000 people in a stadium completely sold out for 6 days, not a couple of hours like the Super Bowl. And it became actually one of the largest media events all last year. And I show you this because this is going to show you what technology can do. This is their halftime show. And what they did was they created a K-pop band with 2 K-pop singers in Seoul, South Korea, 2 American singers. They made a music video, and they made a whole dance number with an augmented reality characters from the video game, dancing with the human beings in the stage. This hit 200 million peak viewers. That's twice the Super Bowl. And they hit an average of 114 million viewers, which is 3 times the Super Bowl for 6 days, right, compared to the couple of hours of the Super Bowl. And also to even show the size of this, I met with like the head of Fox Music. This song, which game developers made, not music studios and the rest, like game developers made the song for this, was the #1 song on the international Billboard list for like 4 months after this. So literally like a bunch of developers are winning the music industry, and they're all trying to figure out like what is going on. But it just shows you the level of like the expectation. Like what is the event? What are they spending their money on? How do they engage? How do they know the audience? They can create these crazy immersive experiences which get people really engaged and get out there. We're also seeing, again, just some other stuff that's going on in the space. Disney has been playing out with this a lot. The Void is all the stuff. It's called Secrets of the Battlefield, where you can go play a stormtrooper with virtual reality. The interesting thing for them was that it vastly improved throughput of the audience. They can only get like a certain amount of people through all the rides. but because you can be right next to somebody and have no idea if they're there or not, they can actually get like 6 times the amount of people through that compared to like Star Tours in Tomorrowland. So there's going to be a lot more of this. They've done some big investments here with Marvel and Pixar to create new stuff. Beat Saber is kind of taken off the world. The one that's actually in the top right I'll share because it shows also another side of this. There's a company called Striver that originally had done a lot of the sports-related VR training stuff. So if you ever saw Brett Favre like practicing in Oculus Rift, that's what that company was. But they suddenly reached out and talked to Walmart about training, right? Like getting a different level of training, because all the boring corporate training that a lot of us all have to go through of like videos and just kind of the quizzes and everything else, this was to change the game. And what they did was they used this to train people on Black Friday. Because you can imagine if you're a brand new employee and you had the low end of the totem pole that you get stuck there, they found out that 86% of people that have to work on Black Friday have never been there on a Black Friday and are the most unexperienced people in Walmart. So what they did was they put 360 cameras in every single Walmart around the world, and then they forced every single employee to go through 2 hours of Striver training, where you literally learn about things like when do I call the cops, how do I identify theft, how do I find somebody that's hurt, like all the things that go in that chaos moment. And you can imagine that is a very different immersive way to actually learn what's going to go on that day. And they vastly improved like the output of just the happiness of customers during Black Friday because of that. So we're going to see it not just do entertainment, but it's also going to go into education and then to work life and everything else. That's basically how most technologies trend forward. Another thing that we talk about with customers that's going to happen the next couple of years is this whole concept called the personal data economy. And what this really is, this is beyond the crowd economy or the algorithm economy. And what this is this is the concept that there's a whole lot of data out there about a lot of people, but a lot of times it's not used to the benefit of the individual, right? A lot of times the data is used without your knowledge, or somebody like Axiom or the rest of the companies say, we got 1,500 pieces of information about every adult in the world. Half the time that stuff's wrong because that's just how data life is, where things can kind of mess up and connect. But at the same time, a lot of the times the customer's not getting the benefit of that, right? They don't see the benefit for the data they're doing. And people have figured this out, right? This is why, Facebook and everybody else has to go in front of Congress. They're figuring out people understand the value of data. It's GDPR and everything else that feeds into that. So the companies that are going to do really, really well in the next 2 to 5 years are going to do 2 things. They're going to jump in front of GDPR and the national privacy law that's being worked on in the White House right now, because they don't want to deal with it after the fact. You need to get a conversation go with your customer before you are told what to do. But the other side of it is that you're going to be open and honest and transparent and say, this is the data I know about you. If you give me more data or you help clean this data up, I will give you a value for this, right? It might be loyalty, it might be gamified, it might be points, it might be literal cash. It can be all different kinds of ways, but creating that relationship where you're open about, here's what I know about you, let's improve this, and also if I have better data, I can give you a better experience. You change the game in the relationship. A great company that does this is a company called Nexar. Nexar is an Israeli startup that is killing the world right now because what they've done is this capability, it gives you a dash cam, right? So you have your cell phone in front of you, while you're driving around. It does navigation and everything else, but it does neat things like if you're in an accident, it automatically records the accident. It automatically sends it to your insurance company. If you have a conversation with the police, it automatically records all of that. It will, do things like if somebody with a couple cars in front of you slams on their brakes, it lets you know if you're both running Nexar, so you can stop early. There's like neat things that happen there. It's 100% free, right? It's a great new capability. It's 100% free because you are agreeing that you are giving a live streaming camera feed from the front of your car to a company that now has the best mapping data on the planet. Because there's only a certain amount of Google cars that can drive around. Now there's like 10, 15,000 people in New York driving around with a camera in front of their car. You could do some really powerful stuff with that data. But again, it's being open and honest. It's saying that's what you're giving me. I'm giving you all this great benefit and taking pain away from your life about dealing with your insurance companies, et cetera. But I'm using this at other reasons. And again, they were just open and transparent about it. So they've done really, really well. And companies need to just really kind of figure out how to negotiate that relationship. We're also going to see advertising fundamentally change. WPP and Publicis and Omni and all the rest of these guys, they're all customers of Salesforce. I've met with Rashad and talked about this. Like, there's a fundamental difference that's going to happen in the next couple of years. And a lot of this is just changing with how we accept what is advertising right now. Part of that is because, go back. Part of that is because, as it comes up, this button does not want to work. There we go. All right. Part of this is the fact that people are kind of being overloaded with advertising, and despite the fact that people don't really like advertising half the time, companies have always kind of increased what's going on in advertising. And there's also a problem that we don't have really more time right? We've kind of run the limit. Like everybody basically spends most of their waking hours or free moments in front of a screen. And that's why we're seeing a decline of growth everywhere. Not just even in the loss of what folks have been doing on television, it's actually kind of petering out, which is good. But in the reverse of stuff like digital video, it's slowing down because there's literally no more time that we can spend in front of this. So people are doing things like just let's get rid of ads. Let's try something different. And Spotify basically has a complete stranglehold on the music industry and doesn't want to lose this. And they see competitors that have no ads, so they've been testing this out. So in the UK and in Australia, they've completely removed advertising and changing their monetization model. And also at the same time, they've been playing around this within pockets of the US, where they're literally going to remove ads because they want to go the Netflix model. They want to try a different way of monetizing that doesn't, anger the user and gets them to pivot to something else. The other side of this, though, is, again, I was saying that like companies are trying to hit numbers. They're trying to hit growth. They're trying to figure out what's going on now. And the CMO is like, let's put more in. And a lot of companies are just increasing the amount of ads, which is the reverse effect on the users. You guys are actually doing really well. WarnerMedia is actually one that's going down. So you guys are figuring it out that advertising has to change. It's just not more impressions that you have to put out there. It's what the impression actually does is more important. Part of that is you need to understand how to talk to somebody, and that is beyond demographics, it's psychographics. And that's not new in the media industry, but they're getting really sophisticated at it, right? So I'm not a white male that works in Silicon Valley. I'm a dad of kids with autism. I'm a gamer. I'm a movie fanatic, like all the things that help you make the decisions in your life. That's psychographics. And you can do really good things with this, and you can do really bad things with this, which is why some companies are at Congress. But one of them that did really good, I love sharing because it's just a perfect example, is what Porsche did. Porsche has got a big problem. There's not a lot of people buying really expensive cars anymore, and it's going to change very drastic for them in the next couple of years. So they did a big study at NYU and said, like, let's try to figure out what we need to do to talk to our customers. They did a big psychographic study, and they came back with about 6 different types of people that buy a Porsche, and that's it. There's only 6 different types of people that buy a Porsche. And you can imagine it's the person celebrating at the end of their career. It's the older guy that wants to look younger versus the ladies. It's all the things that you put in your mind of like, yeah, that's a Porsche guy. But the one that they didn't know about at all, which I totally understand, is the dad that loves to brag in front of his kids. So they made this commercial series called The Everyday School Bus, where there's a yellow Porsche sitting out in front of a school. The dad's sitting on the hood of the car. The bell rings. The kids run out all embarrassed, like covering their eyes. The dad just kind of smiles. He jumps in. They drive off. Everyday School Bus. That single advertisement did better than all their advertising last year because they finally found a new audience. They found a crowd they had never touched before, and they understood how to talk to them to realize this is what you could do with their Porsche. Right? And that's the level of relationship you have to have. You have to go much further beyond than just understanding a broad audience and how I'm going to hit everybody. That doesn't work anymore. You have to be very targeted and customized and personalized. We're also seeing, there we go. We're seeing also another piece of this is just emotional input. And that can be also the kind of creepy stuff that Facebook's been doing. And they're actually retracting a lot of this. But they were doing things like they can know how you're typing, if you're drunk typing or angry typing or like stuff like that. And using that as feed into like advertisement. Or even if you turn on the camera and you do live or take pictures, they do emotional detection. They feed that into how your emotion is for that day. More important than this is what Amazon has been doing, where the new Amazon Fire Stick happens when you're going in saying like, hey, I want to watch something on television today. They go, how was your day? And you go like, oh, it was a really hard day, or, I just broke up with my girlfriend, or, the kids have really been getting on me, or whatever you want to tell the system, and then that emotional input feeds in. It's another whole level set of just understanding the situation. And they're starting to use that information. Again, it helps you get to a better realization of what the customer wants. We're also seeing that there's a bigger change in just what ads have to become. Part of this is what Tide did with the viral ads that took on the world, that broke all the models of what a 3-second and 60-second and all the rest of the stuff is. They're going to play around with that a lot. That's not new, but it just shows you that they have to kind of constantly change that relationship of what does it mean to advertise. Another one is the purpose-driven stuff. If you didn't see the Breaking 2, it's kind of a big thing. It was Nike had a brand new shoe. They were going to go to WPP and they were going to hit the world with billboards and everything else that they've done for normal stuff. But Nat Geo had a brand new CEO at the time and says, like, why aren't we at the table? Like, why aren't we having that conversation? So they approached Nike and said, let's make something special. Let's make a documentary and talk about the human spirit. Let's talk about the marathon runner. Let's talk about breaking the record. So they built this thing called The Breaking 2, and it was a documentary that won a ton of awards and had more viewership than probably any billboard would normally have. Because, again, they understood how to relate and how to talk with their customers. They also got to high levels of precision during the World Cup. A lot of people don't know this. Adidas, as I was instructed by the CEO, got a commercial series that ran during the World Cup that had 138 different variations. individual slivers in the middle of the commercial that would change. So if you liked the French team versus the Crimea team versus this certain player, they would bring those people into the commercial. If you were a younger kid, they would show you sneakers. If you were an older person, they would show you a jersey. Like they were playing around with the model of every single individual commercial. Now it's hard to do regionally and on broadcast, everything else like that, but if you were on the app, if you were on Twitch, if you're on Adidas.com, etc., they can get to that level of depth. And again, it just changes what a commercial means is not going to be one version ever. It's going to be hundreds of versions that you have to manage and kind of pull together at the right moment. And we're also seeing this big change for the micro-influencer, which is really to talk about, and I'll cover it a little bit more later, but it's this just general change that people care more about the people in their life and the people that help do their influence instead of the Kardashians and Drake and Ninja and all the other top names that you think it might have an impact. They really don't at this point. 82% of all decisions you make is because of the people in your little community and your little influence bubble, not anything else. So figuring out how to get them to market, how them to share information is a really powerful change. Amazon has got a new thing for the affiliate program, which is the Amazon affiliate program is if I tell you go buy this television, this screen, et cetera, I get $10 as a kickback for you doing that. They're now playing around with that for Prime. So if I post a link on Facebook or I send somebody a link and say, go watch Marvelous Miss Maisel, it's an amazing show, go check it out, and then you go binge watch it for 12 hours, I get like $5 or $10 in my Amazon Prime account. That is viral marketing at a whole different level and actually pays people for their level of influence. Not trying to give $100 grand or $5 million to Ninja to do something. It's like, no, let's just give the money out to the people that actually make the change. So getting to that level at the ground roots is going to be a new thing that's going to show up in a big way. Also, again, this concept that things are done on the fly, that content is built on the fly is becoming more and more popular. The CDPs and things like OpenText, et cetera, that actually build these commercials and advertisement models and everything else. It's going to change more where the creative job is going to be to curate and to find a bunch of different pictures or a bunch of different assets or a bunch of different commercials and then actually feed those in by an AI that'll make the decision. We actually liken this to the difference of what's going on with like what happened to the AutoCAD industry and architects in general, right? They used to have to draw the building and make it individually themselves. Now they do it where they go into AutoCAD and they say, here are my requirements, and then AutoCAD spits out 100,000 different buildings, and then their job is just to pick the one that they want. That's going to be the bigger change for this. Again, where like the advertiser and the creative is going to say, here are my requirements, and here's all the assets that I have. Just make a whole lot of stuff, and then these are the ones that I want. And then the AI will say, out of these 6, this will be the one for this individual person. So again, it's just going to change. We're also going to see some bigger changes in work and life. It's important because we all talk about automation and everybody freaks out around it. But I'm here to tell you jobs always go up. I've done a lot of work with the Department of Labor and talked about it with the White House, et cetera. Like literally every major technology wave, when everybody thought the world was going to end, jobs have always gone up. Last 50 or 60 years, we actually added 100 million people to the workforce. And there are times and points where everybody kind of remembers it. I was meeting with the CEO of Bank of America and JP Morgan, and we were talking about the ATM era, when they literally thought ATMs were going to change everything. There was going to never be a bank in the world. Like people would just talk to a machine on the wall, and what are all their employees going to do? It just changed, right? We got it instead of there being 15 different teller windows and everybody picking up their checks on Friday. The bank became a relationship. It became a more higher level customer conversation. You made relationships with businesses. You provide financial advice. They're even changing like coffee, these places into coffee shops and like everything else, right? Where they're changing on the fly what the customer wants. And they even allowed a whole new business of local banks, because local banks never existed before ATMs because they didn't have the capacity to deal with the hundreds of people that would show up wanting their paycheck. But now they can just say, go to the machine outside to do that, and then everything else is handled by the people inside. So again, it's more of a lack of an imagination when people think about technology going away, that it's just going to change. Another piece of that, though, is because of automation, there are certain aspects of your job that will change, but not the job itself. Right? So certain tasks are things that we can actually automate, like predictable physical work, data processing, those kind of things that a machine does really, really well. Those are going to be things that are going to be handed off to AI, because those are the things it does really, really well. But on the reverse, unpredictable physical work or customer interactions and managing expertise, we're not going to be there for the next 30, 40, 50 years in AI. So it's a long time conversation to have, but at the same time, it just shows you that we're not going to lose these kind of jobs. A great example of this is my boss says the plumber will never be replaced. Because you can imagine a plumber has to talk to a customer that has no idea what the problem is. They show up at a house, it's a customer conversation, they open up the bottom of the sink, it's different every single place in the entire world. There's like no data set that answers that problem in the investigation and the relationship there. So again, those kind of jobs are just always going to exist. But the things that we don't want to do are going to start being automated because it just makes it easier. To keep up with what's going on, It's important to learn. A lot of times when I go out and speak around the world, people ask me, hey, my kids are in college, they're thinking about going into AI. I say, go into ethics and go learn how to learn. Like, that's more important. They call these the new collar workers. Your ability to just pivot really quickly from job to job is more important. Most people in their life spend 5-10% of their life keeping up with education, whereas they say for the World Economic Forum it needs to be 20 or 30% in the next 3 to 5 years because everything's changing. Literally, a new company comes out with a new thing. There's always a big new announcement. There's a tweet from our president. Whatever's going on, there's something always hitting us, and it's keeping up with that. You have to focus a lot on that, or you just kind of get siloed and you don't look forward, and then you have a problem assembling. That's partly why Salesforce did a big thing called Trailhead. It's one of the biggest initiatives for the whole company. It's how we were teaching the world how to do, our platform, our developers. You want to learn about Salesforce, it's how you do it. It's a fun, gamified way to do it. And actually, this was my first job at Salesforce. I was the product owner for our internal version of this because we built this not as an original, we're going to teach the world. It was because we had our own problem of we were growing 30% a quarter every single quarter for the last 20 years. We're the fastest growing software company in history. When we buy a new company like a MuleSoft of thousands of employees for billions of dollars, it's like, okay, every single salesperson in the entire organization needs to know within 2 days, what does it do? How do I sell this? What happens if they share this? I need to talk to somebody in MuleSoft. Who do I get to? Like company rollouts that do training for 6 months, that just shows you the speed and pace of change of what's going on. You can't work that scale. So we built this to just be really fast and make it fun. And it's been one of our biggest products actually just coming out for my Trailhead. So companies can use it to train their own employees. So the last thing I'm going to hit you with is just some kind of macro trends before we'll open it up. The bigger one that is literally I can't stop telling every single customer and company about this in the media space is social viewing. What this basically means is nobody wants to watch something by themselves. Nobody likes binge watching by themselves, especially Gen Z people. They really enjoy the social experience. This goes all the way back to You've Got Mail with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan having the phone off the hook so they can watch a movie together. That's that impact. You need to create the Super Bowl effect of making everybody get together to watch something together. A lot of companies are working on this. And the one that really hit the world that really surprised people was what Steam did. When they had the International, it's the biggest esport event all year, they had the normal chat window, they had the normal broadcast stream, everything else you see on Twitch and all the rest. But they had a button that said, watch with friends. And they just kind of put it up there. It was kind of a test capability. A majority of people clicked on it, and then what it would do is bring up Steam, and it would show you all your friends that are watching, and you could join into a chat room and talk about what's going on. Or, the more important one they figured out was there was a little link below that said, find people locally. And the amount of people that hunted down and found that button that said, I want to watch with people in my area. I don't know people that play this game. I want to create this social event. It's the bar effect of you're a sports fan and you walk in and you're watching the game. It's like everybody wants to talk. You want to make friends immediately with somebody that knows what you want to talk about. That's what they did. And it was literally a big change for them, a moment of okay, we didn't even think anybody was going to touch this thing, and it's become huge. This is why Facebook watch parties and the rest are all figuring this out. And a great example I got to experience was the last season of Game of Thrones. I was part of a project at Facebook called the Theater Initiative, where every Sunday night at 6 o'clock, I would log into Oculus Rift, and I would watch it with 35 people in a virtual movie theater. And it was amazing. It's basically take Mystery Science 3000 and the Rocky Horror Picture Show and put that with Game of Thrones, and literally you have people throwing fake popcorn at the screen. You can mute people, you can move around, you can pause it so everybody can talk about what's going on. It creates this social virtual environment to watch something together. Every company is working on this in some shape, way, or form because that's where we need to move to, that people can engage and they want the social experience. And people are having that backlash of what technology has done to them to kind of silo them apart. So we're going to see a lot of companies focus on this. Esports is going to keep going as it has done, and then they're going to see a lot of stuff cross channels where companies are going to start breaking the rules. Disney and Fortnite did it famously when the marketing team, literally the CMO over at Disney, had a kid that was playing Fortnite, and he realized I could make any commercial and billboard or magazine ad. Nobody in the world under the age of 15 is ever going to see it unless it's in this game. So they approached Epic and said, we want to put Thanos in the game for our Avengers movie. And it took 9 days for Disney and Epic to agree, which you can imagine with Disney lawyers. It was a magic moment. And it went really quickly, and it was the best viral marketing campaign for anybody that age. The NFL, again, tried to follow suit, said, hey, look at this great thing. We're going to try to do it. So you can buy your jerseys, you can buy your equipment, you can look like your character, your favorite player. But the difference is that Disney is a little bit hardened about what goes on the internet, and the NFL was a little shocked what happens on the internet, because people were taking pictures like the Kaepernick character kneeling, or the guy who got busted for like dogfighting with like dogs in Fortnite, and everything else. The memes and the trolls come out, and they kind of do what they do. The NFL panicked and said, "Oh my God, pull it off the internet," which they need to be explained to. You can never do that. And it basically was showing like companies trying to figure this out, trying to understand this, and it's a new level of skill. Right? It's understanding what happens on the internet. It's understanding what needs to be done and understanding with your customer what that relationship is. It's being authentic, and that they needed to understand. It wasn't just a money play. They tried to understand the gamer, and you need to do that if you're going to go to that group. That's also why there's some companies that have been doing it really, really well, of kind of ramping this up. The big one that was really interesting was the Overwatch League. I've been working with the leadership over there, kind of helping them kind of plan this stuff out. And one of them was I had talked to the CEO of State Farm, because he had I think it was a nephew that was playing Fortnite. He kind of wanted to understand what was going on in this space. And I basically said, like, you should be on Twitch. Like, as a company, you should be on this. You should get into esports. But don't do it like a lot of brands have done it, because a lot of brands come in there and they make like the cheesy commercials that we're gamers, we understand you, blah, blah, blah. And like every gamer's like, nope. And they all make fun of it and it just gets buried. Where State Farm did something very important. They came in super passively. They basically had a giant logo. It would show up like in the pre-rolls. It would show up like, brought to you by this event kind of thing. And they only had the announcers mention it like once or twice, just saying, hey, everybody, thanks to State Farm for helping us run this giant event and being a great partner of the Overwatch League. They had more people under the age of 18 go to the website than they've ever had in history. Like, because there was a bunch of kids going like, what the hell is State Farm? And they went like, okay. And then they like logged into the website to figure it out. That's the humility and the authenticity that you need to do in that area, because you cannot explain to somebody in the gaming culture that if you don't speak their language, you're not going to do really well. McDonald's did really well with that too. Also in the world of sports, basically every single major sports league on the planet is getting into esports, because they're figuring out that they have to know this. I met with the Philadelphia Eagles, I met with the Kings, I met with the Warriors. They are all figuring this out, because there is a bigger important play here that they need to bring in an audience that's younger, that maybe not even playing the sport. Like I was talking with the NFL, they have a drop in the amount of people that are actually playing football, because kids don't want concussions and everything else like that, but a ton of them play Madden football. So it's like you need to figure out how to translate those two worlds together. So they're all kind of dipping their toe in this space. And they're also, because there's a lot of really interesting stats about this. They say the majority of Epic fans, the person who buys the jersey, that engages on Twitter and Facebook, that goes to all the games, that is like a super fan, the MLS came back with a study that said 65% of them actually grew up playing the game FIFA, not actually playing soccer. Right? Like, and that just shows you the difference. Like, I've got a nephew that was huge into the World Cup. He's never played soccer in his life, but he plays FIFA all the time, and he wanted to watch the World Cup because that was the big social thing to do at that moment, right? And translating those audiences is what companies are trying to figure out. I briefly say this. It's a whole long conversation. If you want to talk about it, I can't talk about the future and not talk about what's going on in China. That is a very long conversation, but if you really want kind of just an easy update, there's an amazing book that just came out about 2 months ago. It's called AI Superpowers. It's from Kai-Fu Lee. He's one of the brightest guys in the industry. He was actually the former head of Google China. He was the former head of Microsoft's research of AI in China, and is now the strategist for the largest VC and the Avenue of Entrepreneurs, which is their Silicon Valley. Really bright guy. And he talks about like what is going on between China and us and AI and our future. You want a really quick, easy introduction, that's the best way to talk. We're also seeing just the rise of the smaller streamer, and also the fact that you just can't play normal in the landscape, especially in the gaming world. If you don't know what Apex Legends is, I highly encourage you to check it out. It's basically the top game that's come out on Twitch in the last month. And the interesting thing about this is it's basically killing Fortnite, like really, really quickly. They hit 50 million people playing the game every single night in like 3.5 weeks. And it's just taking the world by storm. The most interesting thing about that study is they did no marketing, none. They literally went to EA, their publisher, and said, so we're going to release a game in a month, and we don't want your help at all. And EA was like, wait, what? Like, what are you doing? And like, we normally do this big marketing campaign, this big thing. They're like, nope, we paid 5 streamers, and that's all we need. We don't need anything else. So when it came out on day 1 of Twitch, nobody knew about the video game. Nobody knew about the release date. Nobody even knew what it was. And there were 5 streamers that just started streaming the game, and it spread like wildfire, because it's an amazing game. And they realized, EA and the rest of the brands, if they came out with this big marketing campaign versus Fortnite, the whole world would have buried them before they even saw the light of day. So they played very differently. And it shows you, again, you have to rethink this. Like, do you actually market, or do you let the product market itself? And that's a very big discussion that's going on right now in the gaming industry. We're also seeing the big change where, again, those top influencers are not making the impact they should be, right? Like the top 100 streamers on Twitch for the first time ever went down in viewership. The top 100 to 1,000 went up a crazy amount because people like the smaller communities. If you go to Ninja's stream and you try to engage in chat, there's 200,000 people there. It screams by with a bunch of just craziness, and everybody goes like, okay, I'm not going to talk here. Whereas you can go talk with your friends, you can go see your teachers that stream and all other kinds of crazy stuff that these kids engage with. Local, small, micro communities. They're little micro influencers. That's becoming the bigger thing, which is why these numbers are going so big. And you could still even do crazy things like throw a big concert like Marshmallow did in Fortnite. They're creating these new kind of venues and events because they're just playing around with the model constantly. Streaming as a video game service is coming out literally in a couple of days. There's a big announcement on the 19th coming up. Where Google and Verizon have all been fighting over this. They want the Netflix for video games. So the concept is, instead of buying a console, instead of having that all, you can literally just plug in your Xbox controller or whatever to your computer and play through Google Chrome the latest video games. And you can imagine how much that's going to change the world and how everybody's trying to figure that stuff out. Ubisoft is the one that famously did it for Assassin's Creed. A great AAA game, amazing game that did really well. You could play it through the browser with no lag. It did perfect. So you can imagine what that's just going to change the world, the expectation that I can play any game whenever I want, wherever I want, and I don't need a console. That's going to be a bigger change, and that's a big feed for also 5G. We're lastly just moving to this kind of new state of a digital assistant platform, right? This concept that you have a single app or a single way that you engage into a customer. Next 2 to 5 years, you're going to have to get through their virtual assistant because their virtual assistant is going to become just like an executive assistant is for any single CEO on the planet. It's going to manage your schedule. It's going to manage your email. It's going to help you out knowing where you're going to go. It's going to let you know what you need to read and respond to, and that's who you're going to advertise to in the future, is that thing, trying to get in front of the user first. And that's why when we talk about the future, and my boss who helped write Minority Report, he says there were 2 major mistakes they made. Well, 3. One of them was they got the timeline wrong, right? They said it was 2050, but if you go rewatch that movie, it's basically today. The precogs are basically machine learning. The other thing they got wrong was, one, Steven Spielberg wanted jetpacks on police, and he said that'll never happen. But the other one was advertising. He said, I fundamentally got it wrong. Like, I thought it was going to be this world where stuff was always coming at you. So you see where, like, Tom Cruise is walking through a mall, and, like, Guinness ads and Alexis ads and all these kind of things are flying in his face constantly, like, trying to get him engaged. The model of advertising in the future is what the movie Her did. I encourage you to go watch that movie. It's a really good movie, not just because of the love relationship with Scarlett Johansson, but more so the fact they got really good view of what the future is. Because there's no billboards, there's no commercials, there's no advertisement. Everything comes from his personal assistant. And the personal assistant is out there, one, figuring out what I need to do and bring in front of them. So it's a different level of relationship, and you have to have those kind of direct connections to customers. That's how you have to think about what advertising is. So last is I'm going to leave you with a quote. I'm going to prepare you against the world, because this is what you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of people doom and gloom. We're going to talk about the elimination of all service and office jobs. We're all going to need universal basic income. It's going to be an artist economy. Like, the economy is going to collapse. Like, everybody freaks out about this. But I can tell you without a doubt, and especially because working with my boss, who's one of the most world-famous people that has done this in his life, and he's 73 years old, he tells us every single time it's not a new story. Like, this quote is from 1961, when we thought computers were going to destroy the world, and we still had Russians in the news, which is kind of a reoccurring thing. But in general, we always have that moment of negativity towards the future. This is why Mad Max, Black Mirror, Blade Runner, Westworld, etc., they're all super popular right now, is people are viscerally freaking out about change. They actually did a study at Stanford where they scan the human brain when somebody is asked a question of, where are you at a year from now? And they found out if you ask that question to somebody, the personal identification area of the brain shuts off. The human being treats that human future version of themselves as a stranger. And it totally makes sense. This is why people procrastinate. It's somebody else's problem. It's like, why I don't save for retirement? It's because I'm giving money to a stranger. Or like, why all these things are going to blow up the world is because all these evil people that are not me are going to make the wrong decisions. So I just encourage you to think there's a lot of really cool, neat possibilities out there, like especially things like autism glass. They're going to change how we're going to think about technology. And that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, just want to be sensitive because we have to work. So yes. I'm like, it's 1 o'clock. Hey, guest news, you're going to get the deck. Isn't that cool? You're going to get this to be recorded. So anything you missed, that was like the fastest presentation on the planet.
The future in 10 minutes.
So if we'll open up for a couple questions. So Timothy, go ahead, buddy.
Oh.
Yes. We're working on that a little bit right now.
Yeah.
I've met with a lot of the leadership at AT&T. I have not done so much within the Turner, Warner Brother, et cetera landscape, but part of that is what we're doing literally all today. Been meeting with different folks. And yeah, I mean, the best way that I can kind of help change the story for customers is getting with the leadership to kind of understand this level of vision. And it also just changes, I'm not within the company making the same arguments, which a lot of people in this room probably make the same arguments. So it's however I can provide help, I'd love to, and try to provide that guidance. So.
But I think, Timothy, I'm going to say that's why you're here. Because you are going to be a light bulb that gets everybody in this room, right? So now you can walk away with these great ideas, really, really good thinking. Your head's probably spinning, but you'll be able to go back to it in the VOD. You'll be able to look at the deck and just think of stuff about how you can do it. Because I think sometimes it has to. I'm more confident that shit get done in this company when it comes from the ground up as opposed from the top down. I think we can all sometimes agree to that. So, any questions? Keep going.
I have one question.
Yep.
Because it's probably a long answer. Is there a place you could direct me to, or a book or a place to look at things that would help us capture information about psychographics? So we're looking at doing some focus groups around multicultural marketing and audiences, and while we've got Nielsen data that will tell us the demographic information, we want to actually poll employees who represent those communities to get at the psychographic. And so as you talked about all the different devices, I'm wondering, is there one out there that you would recommend that would help us with that?
I would say the easiest way to do it would be just reach out to me afterwards. We can just catch up, because there's a whole long list of that stuff. Like, there's a lot of the stuff that fed into the studies that we can share, like the white papers, et cetera, that goes into this. But then there are authors and et cetera that we've brought into thought leaders kind of build this, and I can kind of share that list so you can kind of keep up to date from your own side. So.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
How often are you all using sociological studies to kind of pursue these notions of gather metrics and things of that nature? Because it seems like a lot of that could be solved by pursuing that type of study.
It ranges, right? Like obviously to build this kind of stuff, we have a lot of different levels of input. Like we have researchers, there's podcasts and articles and newsletters and everything else that kind of feeds into our brain. I think the more interesting one that I've been able to be kind of exposed into is just because of the relationship that Salesforce has with a lot of different companies, we get to kind of meet with all the senior leadership across, and we build that version of the future by literally talking with the Igers and the Bezoses and the Musks and the rest of the people, like how does this all kind of knit together? And I feel that, like, in a lot of ways, that it gets it more realistic, because a lot of times we get in front of customers. Like, we call them ignites, where we can kind of get, our kind of group actually out involved with customers and talk directly with people about, like, what they want, what they're aiming for. So it's kind of more primary and secondary type research that feeds into it, instead of just, like, kind of going to universities on the other side. We get that level of input that comes in for all these studies, but we kind of balance it with a lot of different things. So, because they say best if you want to think about, like, how do you plan for the future? You don't try to predict it, which is a lot of stuff that comes out in the white paper world, where they say, like, autonomous vehicles are going to be 2035, and they, like, stamp down a time date. That's not valuable for a lot of companies, and it's the famous quote, if you live by the crystal ball, you'll eat glass, like, because you cannot predict the future. It's more about trying to think about all the different possibilities out there and using that to help make the decisions of what future you want and kind of navigate towards that. There's a really great book on it. My boss wrote The Art of the Long View. It's taught in colleges around the world. How do you do future thinking? And he talks specifically about how balancing what you just said from the societal research, the focus groups and the rest with outside influencers, and how do you kind of bake those all in together to get a view. So.
If you get a chance, Peter Schwartz, you can just look him up. He's a great speaker. And you can spend, there's probably hours of content, and you should check it out. It's really, really good stuff.
Yep.
If there are any more questions, just want to say thank you. Next month, we're going to do something on OTT. We've done a massive study on what OTT features are the most popular and what we should be looking at, so look out for that. But more importantly, I just want to thank John for coming. And if you guys want to come up after, he'll be here to hang out. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.